Okay, they're all in.
No.
Yes.
I just want to make sure you look on the right meeting. My day's been.
Sounds a little like mine.
Almost have to leave. Uh, 2014 Jeep show, and it doesn't communicate now with the engine, so I can't start the engine.
Ah.
It's one of those things you actually insert and turn. It says host is joined. Let them know you're here. We've let them know.
What?
I got this message.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but that's you have to let me know.
I didn't have to let anybody else in.
I click on the wrong one.
Yeah, yeah, I think you did. And then why didn't I? Because the waiting
This is
room
the
was
one
open.
online.
I'm freaking out because it says,
Give me what number?
you're not here. You have 17 people in the meeting.
I know. I'm just the one online. Second. Okay. Line.
I was afraid. I can't lock you out. You can't get in.
I'm nowhere in the court. It says waiting room. You're in the waiting room. Admit all.
Yeah, but you're not in the waiting room.
Okay. There you go.
Oh, everybody was in the waiting room,
Everyone's-
including you. Oh, I thought they were all happy as could be recording it.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure I'm on Owl, and I'm gonna make sure my video is on Owl, and I'm gonna swoop it up. Oops, I'm not part of the screen. Can everybody hear us? Anybody hear us? I see a head.
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect,
Thank you.
and we can hear you. We've
Okay,
achieved.
great. Y'all set, ready to go? All right, I'm gonna call the meeting of the Shutesbury Selectboard to order. Today is August 15th, 2023, and this meeting is being held via Zoom with two people, Melissa and Becky at the at Town Hall. I'm gonna go through. Go ahead. Becky.
Sorry, we also have Steve Stasi, who is the National Grid representative.
I'm sorry, what's Steve's last name?
Susie.
Oh, I did
Susie.
it wrong.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. So first I'm going to go through the agenda. Unlike most meetings, we're not having public comment up front this evening. We have a really tight schedule, so we're going to try to work public comment in a little bit later. We have a number of people from the outside, and so we are really having a tough time dealing with scheduling tonight. So on the agenda, the first item is going to be the discussion about next steps regarding the Locks Pond culvert. We'll have our engineer here. Then after that, we have a poll hearing with National Grid. It starts at 6 o'clock. At 6:20, we will continue the culvert discussion if needed. Thereafter, review minutes. Then we have a request from the Shutesbury Athletic Club to put an article on the upcoming town meeting warrant for serving on Sundays. At 6:45, we will have the appointment of the Highway Superintendent Hiring Committee. After that, just reviewing select board votes that we took last week, I believe. I can't remember if it was Wednesday Wednesday or Thursday night meeting, the 9th, whatever day that was. After that, we have 2 appointments of 2 members to the web committee, then discussion about Conservation Commission legal spending update, ECAC, Community Choice Aggregation. ECAC is the Energy Climate Action Committee. And then discussion about legal review of the culvert drawdown violation order that the select board received. And after that, town administrator updates. So I am going to try and work in public comment, as we go along and see how the agenda is going. And I apologize to anybody who came specifically for that this evening, but might have to stick around a little bit. So as I mentioned, the first discussion is going to be next steps on the Locks Pond culvert. And those of you who are not familiar with this, we have started to replace the culvert down at Lake Wyola, and ran into some problems because of the excessive amount of water coming through and over the dam, which has necessitated us looking at some alternatives to for dealing with that excess amount of water that was unanticipated. So I don't know, Becky, if you want to start, or if Matt, our engineer from Niche Engineering, is going to give an overview.
I'm happy to give an overview and then let Matt take over with more details.
Okay.
Becky Torres, town administrator. So the project, as Rita outlined, has been stalled because of excessive amounts of rainfall, which are orders of magnitude beyond what we had planned on and above what is a normal year. We have been watching vigilantly. Mark Rivers has found that he had a flow meter given to him by Bill Elliott the last couple of days, 3 days actually, since Sunday. Mark has been taking measurements of the flow through the culvert. We had a reading of 10 the first day, 6 on Monday, which was very optimistic. But with the all-night rain, the numbers went back up to a bit over 20 yesterday. So the contractor, the engineer, and the town have been working together, strategizing the best approach. As you remember, at the last meeting, we had up to 5 options on the table. And today, I think Matt is going to focus in on one option to present to the select board tonight. Matt?
Hi, thanks, Becky. Yeah, this is Matt Stakewitz with Niche Engineering. As Becky said, the plan after the last meeting was to wait and see how conditions continued at the site. In the week since then, Becky was able to find somebody with a flow meter to take more accurate velocity readings at the site. The readings they got were consistent with what we were seeing last week. I had measured it using dye in the water and recording flows at around 16 cubic feet per second. They were a few days later getting about 10 cubic feet per second after a couple days without rain. So and they had gotten down to as low as probably 6 to 8 cubic feet per second was which is the typical operating condition we were anticipated at seeing. The concerning thing was that after a good amount of rain, approximately an inch of rain, which is a considerable amount, the flow went back up to about 20 cubic feet per second. So we're seeing the anticipated flow that we were hoping to have seen at the beginning of August, with an average flow around 8, a maximum flow around 18 to 19. unfortunately, we're just heading, we're heading towards, out of our anticipated, low flow condition and heading into September and October where, you get heavier rainstorms and increased flow. So as Becky said, we, been talking with the contractor, reviewing options. They've been good enough to sharpen their pencil, come down on the estimate as they've, gotten more information on the materials and the labor and all the other things that were going to go into it. Based on the conditions we're seeing and the time frame that they're anticipating to get all that materials, we would need to make a decision basically tonight whether or not to go forward with the increased bypass option, which again, to refresh everyone, was to increase the pipe size that's being installed as a temporary bypass next to the existing culvert, so the existing culvert can be removed. The previous design had accommodated for up to 19 or 20 cubic feet per second. We asked them to replace that with a pipe capable of supporting up to 40 cubic feet per second, so that there wasn't any chance of overflowing that pipe or needing extra pumps to supplement the flow there. So based on that, based on talking with Becky and the contractor, I'm recommending that the town pursue that option. There's really no more time to leave that option on the table. If we don't move on that, they're gonna, the time to get that pipe to replace it is gonna push the project beyond the deadline the contractor gave us to that they would be able to begin that and finish in time. And honestly, as we go towards wetter conditions, I don't anticipate that the flow that we are seeing or had been seeing over the past week is going to be sustainable, or at least it's very risky to assume that it would be. And I'm not sure the contractor is willing to take on that risk either. I mean, they would if we asked them to, but it could potentially cause a lot of liability and cost impacts to the town if something were to happen with the bypass that was installed as planned. I think
Rita,
that's basically the summary I've got. But
sorry about that, Matt. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted, Rita, I have a summary of costs when the select board gets to that portion of the conversation. I can put up on the screen.
Okay. Why don't we see if Eric or Melissa have any questions for Matt?
The only question I have, or a statement really, is that it seems to me that with increased flow or potential increased flow, we have to do this. We're sort of basing it on usually it rains more in the fall and so forth. So it's a precautionary kind of move that we have to make, it seems to me. And that's what it's all about. I mean, because it's right now, when I first got these readings that Mark did of 10 and 6 and so forth, I was thinking, well, we're back to like a situation that the present situation piping could handle that. But I understand that the future, we're sort of basing our decision on future weather, the probability that future weather will be strong or big or heavy. Is that, I mean, that's the statement. Is that true?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we design based on, when it comes to weather and water and all these situations, the best we have is historic data to go on, and in probability and statistics. And it's a risk cost sort of design model where we're not spending $1 billion to, design something that, is going to be way over designed, but then there's also the risk of, situations. And the other thing is we designed this in, I believe, 2019, before we, this year and then 2021, we had, record rainstorm. If we had the foresight of these, years, we may have, been less or more risk averse and gone with a bigger pipe to begin with, but we didn't. We designed for what we statistically had with the costs in mind for the town. So yeah, I agree. I think, there's a potential that we don't get any rain in September and we'd be fine. I think it's statistically it's unlikely, and I think we need to use probability and statistic to make these decisions.
Well, of course we won't get any rain if we decide to put the pipe in.
Yeah, no, of course.
But the pipe, I think it's just fair just to sum up that it seems to me that the pipe, the reason for this pipe is very clearly because the rain was abnormal and it occurred during a time of year where we were hoping that we would be able to build the whole thing in a lower water period. In fact, there wasn't lower period, there was record high water, not record low water. So here we are.
Yeah, statistically, yeah, the lowest period of flow would be the summertime months where you don't have the spring runoff, where you don't have the kind of hurricane events in season and that you get in fall. So I mean, traditionally, yeah, culvert projects are done in July, August, September, and that was always the intent here, and we just didn't get the conditions that would have been optimal for this construction. And if it's any consolation, I know many other projects are dealing with this same situation, so it's not unique to this town, unfortunately.
Melissa, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
So I just had one question, Matt. One of the alternatives that we had discussed was whether or not it made sense to just close everything up and wait until next year. And if you could just kind of summarize what your evaluation of that alternative is.
Of course, yeah. There was an option. Cost wise, it's even harder to predict with that because costs, they weren't anticipated. There's more costs. It's the cost to close up the site and demobilize all the equipment, and what additional costs to redo all that would come in next year. There is also risk associated with that. There's multiple permits that are expiring this year. The Concom permit, which I believe we're going to be asking for an extension for anyway, but there's an Army Corps of Engineer permit which expires next April. There's MassDOT funding tied to this project which expires the end of this year, and there's also a public safety factor in that the culvert is in poor condition. And I think we talked about last meeting that they didn't change the rating of the culvert in this year's inspection, but it doesn't alleviate the fact that it's still poor condition, and you're leaving that around for another year. So the cost is a part of it. I don't think there'd be much savings based on the numbers we've been given, but yeah, I think there's just other risk factors involved that we've kind of been considering, and we want to avoid I would recommend avoiding. And I mean the other big one is that we could be in a situation similar to this year where we get rain that doesn't cooperate, and we end up with a larger pipe and the costs associated with that next year. So I don't think there's much of a benefit. It is a risk to waiting as well.
The one other thing I wanted to check in with about, and then we can start to take a look at the numbers, is we are operating under an existing order of conditions, and we have to go back to the Conservation Commission because there's a time of year restriction on that permit. And I don't know if there's anything related to the permit around a larger pipe versus the one so can you just talk about that and the timing of that and how that works?
Yes, so the Conservation Commission, sorry, I apologize if you're beeping in the background, these are just notifications. The Conservation Commission has a requirement in their order of conditions that they be notified of any changes to the control of water system. In their conditions, it requires a 12-hour notice, but we're going to try and give them as much time as possible because they know that this is potentially coming, and they've been asked to review the control of water changes. So we will, we will notify them once we get the design. So the contractor received the design from the town. They sized the pipe, or they just received the design from their engineer. They got the pipe size that they need. They've looked into sourcing it, and it sounds like they're working on the final revisions to that whole calc package, which they're going to submit to me for review. I'm going to submit to the Conservation Commission so that they have a chance to review it. But I hope that they would see that, there is, that this is really, there aren't many alternatives here, and that it isn't significant impact or change to the project. It's the same general system. It's just the same gravity fed system. It's just a larger pipe diameter. And with the larger pipe, it even reduced, I would say it reduced risks to, flooding and the site and using pumps. So I hope that they would be open to that and see the reasons and impacts that we would be doing that. But yeah, it would be a requirement for them to review and have a chance to respond to that design and condition it as they see necessary.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Anything else, Eric and Melissa, before we move on to taking a look at the numbers?
No,
Okay, Becky, do you want to
Yeah,
show us?
okay, can everyone see that?
Yep.
And is it big enough to read? Oops, too big.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so let me explain the figures in front of you. In the pale green box at the top is an accounting of the funds that go into this project. We began with a $500,000 small municipal bridge grant from the state. We then went to town meeting where we in 2021, where we added the next two amounts, the $201,007 that is going to be borrowed upon completion of the project. And then we added a transfer of capital stabilization of $250,000. We then came up with the $60,000 request, as I knew we had the overruns caused by the concrete company was going to begin charging rental space where they were of about $75,000 a year. So knowing that there were some other overruns in engineering as well, I requested $60,000 at annual town meeting this year, bringing us to a total of $1,011,007. So today, so in the blue box, this is MAS Building and Bridge. Their original bid for the project was $674,788. As I just mentioned above, when we brought the culvert structure to the fire station, we had to rent a crane, and the cost of that work and the drivers and the combination was $11,967.98. I was given at that time an estimate of time and materials that it potentially could cost to move that structure down to the culvert. We again will have to rent a crane and rent a semi truck to load the structure down to the site where it will be put together. As you are most aware, the change order, the fourth item of $18,608 is a result of all the equipment that has been sitting idle on the site. This price is reduced from what we had seen earlier because he had included a cost per hour for the vehicles that included an operator. Upon noting that, they corrected those numbers and they dropped dramatically. So that's the $18,000. And then today, so the subtotal at that point before today is $729,882. The big pipe bypass was originally quoted to us at $129,593.90. We met the engineer and the contractor and myself met to review all the numbers today. I asked a lot of questions because the figures we were given and have gone to the select board included, it's a, what do you call it? It's a lump sum estimate. We will not be charged more money at all if the conditions do not go over 40, the flow conditions do not go over 40 cubic feet per second. We have an option to go just time and materials. There are concerns about doing that because of the potential flooding of the site. And going with the 120,000, it is there is much less exposure or risk to the town than having all the change orders that potentially could come if we go to a higher flow. And I'm sure if the select board has questions, you will ask. And so for the MAS total, it ends at 850,000. We had the infamous pole moving. We originally paid for back in October of 2021 for 15,000. Niche Engineers had an Army Corps engineering issue that took up over a month of time, and there was an addition here. The late permits, we are estimating about another 10,000 for a total of Niche Engineering to cost 170,000. You total all three parties for a total of 1,036,157. The balance, as you saw in the light green box of available funds, is $1,011,000, leaving a balance that the town needs to cover of 25,000, 150 or rounded up to 500, but basically $25,000 is what we need to come up with at this time to move ahead with the larger pipe. Do I have any questions from the select board?
We have 4 minutes till the hearing starts, so we could take 1 or 2 questions from the select board and then go to the hearing and then come back to this. Eric?
One question I have is, I believe somewhere in the summaries that I looked at for the different proposals, these proposals do not include if we have to use heat to, if we run too late and we have to use heat and so forth for the concrete curing late in the season, is a late season deal. Is that true? And if so, shouldn't we put that in the estimate?
I can answer that. This is Matt from Niche Engineering. The reason that we put that deadline in to make a decision tonight so they could get the pipe and install by early September was to avoid that. So we're essentially eliminating that risk by putting a deadline on it and having them start. Because you're correct. If they go into November, past November, there are special conditions you would need to do for pouring concrete in freezing frost conditions. And we're not, we won't run into that if we move forward now.
Okay, thanks.
Melissa?
No, I'm good. That was my question.
I just had a question for you, Becky. I'm surprised that the gap is only $25,000 when we had this unanticipated large expense for the, for the both change orders, for the equipment rental and then the big pipe. How is that?
Okay, so there's two pieces. We have $100,000 worth of contingencies in the original bid. I think it's just over 100,000. So we have the 100,000, and the difference maker is the 60,000 that was voted at town meeting. So that's 160,000. And also we're taking advantage of, as you see, well, it's not here. So the national grid cost had been estimated at 25,000. So we had almost another $10,000. So we had $170,000 to work with going into the project.
So can I just ask you, so the $100,000 is sourced through stabilization or borrowing? That's embedded in the town's money, correct?
No.
Like it doesn't.
The contingency was voted, it was part of the it was part of the 250,000.
That was my question. That was my question.
Okay. Becky, I can also add quickly that I believe the number you went to town meeting with to get the funding for was based on our estimate, the engineer's estimate, which was closer to 750,000 off the top of my head. And MAS came in as the low bidder when they were quite a bit lower than our engineer's estimate. So there was contingency built into our estimate, but I believe they had a project in a very close by, and they were hoping to kind of piggyback both projects together. And in doing so, they were able to save some money and come in as a low bidder. So the bid that came in was lower than what was initially anticipated to begin with.
Okay, I'm going to stop us there at 6 o'clock, and we're going to go into the hearing, and then we'll pick this up after the National Grid hearing. So I'm going to open the public hearing, and I'm just going to read from the announcement about the public hearing under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 166, Section 22. A public hearing is scheduled for today at 6 o'clock for the Select Board of the Town of Shutesbury to consider 3 petitions submitted by Mass Electric Company doing business as National Grid and Verizon New England to install one, I think it's JO pole on Wendell Road at locations approximately 85 feet southwest of the intersection of Wendell Road and Highland Drive, 350 feet northwest of the intersection of Wendell Road and Plaza Road, and 50 feet northwest of the intersection of Wendell Road and Plaza Road. Public access to the virtual public hearing can be found at shutesbury.org. So we have Steve Sosi.
Yes.
Susie, okay. Here with us from National Grid.
Yes, I am.
Okay. So Steve, why don't you, if you can just go ahead and explain the need for the poles, and obviously there's been a big impact already on those of us who live, who travel regularly on Wendell Road, with lots of poles already going up. Looks like you're going to put.
Yes. This is part of a larger project to upgrade major lines or feeder lines in the area. So there's multiple, for us, work request numbers that are all over Wendell, Shutesbury, upgrading these lines from 2-conductor or single phase 2-conductor to 3-phase. We call it spacer cable, so it's much more, say, storm resistant configuration. Spacer cable is like a diamond shape and it's higher tension. So a lot of times when trees fall on them, the lines don't snap off, the trees bounce off. So it's much stronger. It allows more capacity because now it's 3-phase. But for the poles here, pole 50-50, of course, being installed between poles 50 and 51. That's because there is a secondary line that feeds 247. I think it's Wendell Road. That's right, the house right before the Highland Drive intersection. Right now it's being held up by a tree guy, which is not really standard practice. So we need a pole there to support that secondary line going over the street. While we're updating all the other poles and replacing them, we wanted to install that one just to support that secondary line. The other ones on poles, which would include near Plaza Road and in front of the Shutesbury Athletic Club, with pole 56-50 is being installed just to cut down on a long span. The higher tension, the higher weight. When we see a longer than normal span, we would like to put a pole there, a new one, just to support the lines a lot better. And the same thing with pole 57-50 between poles 57 and 58, basically splitting that span equally in two to better support the new lines being installed.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Eric, Melissa, do you have questions?
Well, I have two questions. I assume there are no objections from the neighbors. That would be the first question, or statement or whatever it would be. And the second question is, what is a JO pole?
That jointly owned between
Jointly owned.
Verizon and National Grid. So for decades and decades, all the poles were owned by both Verizon and National Grid. Around 5 years ago, there was an agreement that we install all the poles, Verizon removes all the poles, but we still, if there's existing phone lines, like it is here, Wendell Road's a major road, that all these poles are going to be jointly owned. And Verizon, we send this off to Verizon before we come to full petition hearings, and they agree to, yes, we agree to be co-owners of this pole.
I guess I have a third question. I assume this won't affect our town-owned internet services. Is that correct? Or you'll have to move those wires also or something?
For any cable company, I'm not sure if Shrewsbury does own your own, then they would eventually, we cut and you'll see it if you drive down Wendell Road because we replaced a lot of the poles already. They cut the tops off down to the communication level. So then the cable company, and this is all over, but here, if you own your own cable company, then you'd remove, or transfer your own wires to the new pole. Then Verizon will transfer their wires to the new pole and remove that old pole stuff.
So
Well,
that's,
we do have a whole process that goes on that, where we contact everyone and there's a list and saying, okay, like National Grid has installed all the poles, we cut them off. Town of Shutesbury, now you have to take off and transfer your cable wires. And then when that's done, they notify Verizon, and Verizon takes their wires off and removes.
so that's done at our own expense at the municipal power. Yeah,
Yes, the cable, that's something done by contract between when any cable company applies for permission to go on a joint owned pole through National Grid or Verizon. That is already in the contract to be on that pole.
And then the man hours to do it, of course.
Which Gail and the MLP are handling. Oh,
Okay.
here's Jim
Ed-
Hemingway to give us more details.
Yep, I see Jim. Jim, can you just wait 1 minute? I have one more question or
Sure.
comment. My understanding was that when the all of the installation on all the poles began, that there was not any prior notice, at least as far as I know, the select board wasn't notified that this was going to be going on, and I'm just curious as to what the protocol typically is about letting municipalities know. I mean, it's a big impact at a time when we have another big construction project going on. So
Well,
is-
usually, and just say for a lot of this here, this is post-engineering or post-design for us, and other people take care of it. But a lot of times when we, even if it's just a car accident, once a town gives us permission for a pole location, we also have, and it's in the petition language, that we can replace the pole. So if for any reason, for upgrades, so usually, if it's already an existing pole, and like on one of the road, we replaced a lot of the existing ones, and we don't need a new location or new permission, we already have permission to replace it. For longer or bigger projects like this, which is probably like 100 poles are going to be replaced. I'm not sure what the process was. We do have a town liaison. I will give Brandy Long, and I'll email the information to you when I get back tonight or tomorrow. And it's, you can contact. So that's something, if it's going to be a major project, usually we just give a heads up. I'm not sure what happened on here. That's above, like, another department for me. But we didn't have to get town permission to replace any existing poles.
right, I understand that. It just would have been nice to be notified about it. Jim Hemingway, you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say that that Sheld will be moving the wires from the old poles to the new poles. And so Shutesbury ratepayers are who have fiber optic installed will be paying for this as a result. It will be reasonably expensive. It'll take a while to do it, but we are planning that as we speak.
Great, thanks for that update, Jim. I can take another question if there is one. Otherwise, we can use the time. Rob, go ahead.
What happens if we say, we don't want to move the wires? We'll leave them on the old poles.
You're talking about for the broadband?
Once we put the new poles in and we transfer them over, that's between Verizon and you, but just by experience, a lot of people get very upset about having the double poles, and people want the communication and phone wires transferred to the new wires as soon as possible. You know, once we do this, it's out of our hands. We cut it down to the communication wire level, then it's cable company and Verizon to transfer. And that's a big issue with many towns getting very upset with us and trying to get cable and Verizon to remove those double poles. But sometimes if Verizon doesn't do it, then you'd have to contact Verizon and the cable company.
Okay, so we need a vote here. Is that correct? Peggy, do you know this is my first poll hearing. So what is the language? Is it just to give approval to National Grid?
yes, to approve the National Grid petition for the new pole location.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve National Grid's petition for the installation of 3 new poles along Wendell Road, as noted in the hearing notice, as described in the hearing notice?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Make peace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. I'm just gonna continue because, well, thank you for accepting that. But what, not this work request, but we do have poles being replaced on Locks Pond Road right near that, the intersection with Lakeview Street. So I'm just gonna hang out and listen.
Okay.
And maybe have some questions about the timeline, especially of when you're gonna put the culvert in, because we have a tie-in between lines at that intersection being installed in the near future as well.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
We
Yeah.
had a long talk about it.
Yes.
All right, so why don't we go back to Becky, to your the budget?
Spreadsheet? Did you want the spreadsheet back up?
Yeah,
or-
the spreadsheet, yes. Okay, so we left it at that we have a shortfall of about 25,000, and you're rounding it up, Becky, to $25,500. That's
Just in case there were any transpositions or the smaller amount. So basing this 25,000, we went through all our financial resources. And of course, the very last one I came to is probably the simplest and most one we can expedite, which would be to use ARPA funds to pay for this. Otherwise, we would most likely have to go to a special town meeting unless for some reason the finance committee felt comfortable making this large investment. But I think the balance in our ARPA funds currently, I believe is, I'm sorry, I have it, $36,000. So the funds are available in ARPA. To go to a special town meeting, the date we potentially could shoot for a special town meeting on either September 5th, 6th, or 7th. 7th being the day that we really want to move ahead on the culvert, which is a little tight if we have another option. I think it could work. And at a special town meeting, we would have potentially 3 options. One would be capital stabilization. I think the balance there is about 100,000, and capital is, I'm sorry, stabilization, just plain stabilization with a balance of about 300,000, which we would have time to go to the finance committee with and get a recommendation from them as to the funding source. Because it is after July 1st, but we have not yet certified free cash. Free cash is not an option for us to use for this amount of money. The other potential option would be if we just had a conversation with the assessing department. They have some money left in their overlay that would be more than sufficient if they chose to release those monies in the overlay potentially ahead of a town meeting where the town meeting could choose to spend those overlay funds at that time. So basically, there's 4 different options. There is one that the select board could move ahead with tonight. That would be the ARPA funds, if they so choose. And the other options all include also the select board voting to schedule a town meeting to be posted on August 21st, given the schedule we have with the town clerk's office.
Okay, Eric, Melissa, comments?
Just to add a question I had hanging over from last time. If, right now, with this 25,000 and change, there's no contingency left if we encounter a problem going through the project, correct? That we've used it for solving this problem.
Yeah.
That's my only question.
But it does include, like, it does include the more assurance that when we would have to, potentially when they would have to come in, if there was any kind of trouble or flooding of the site and stuff.
No, that I'm
That risk is
thinking of other.
minimum.
issues,
But there could be, other issues, and you're correct, that would leave us without any remaining contingency at this.
Matt, do you have any guidance for us in terms of that question and the expectation that we would need contingency for this project?
That's hard to say. I mean, foresight is hard. I wish I had it. I don't anticipate any unforeseen circuit. The biggest concern is always the water. That's the hardest thing to deal with. Yeah, it's hard to say now. It's nice to have contingency built in case materials or quantities overrun or are needed, but it's a rather small, straightforward project. So I mean, the culvert's already manufactured, delivered. It's here. The only thing I could see is potentially labor costs if construction took longer than expected, and there was increased, duration on the site and increased, labor. But that was so I can't really say too much more about that, I guess.
Okay.
Is it, and this is kind of a question for you, Rita and Eric and Becky, could we add in 25,000 for a contingency of a labor or something that, so you have something there? Because otherwise our process to get more money to the project is more lengthy and
I think.
you can't move with a
Right.
flex and.
I think the issue would be that, if we have to do a special town meeting, that is possible. We could do that through a special town meeting. The ARPA funds are down to the 35. Some of the projects have not yet been completed. So that would be the trade-off.
Okay.
But it could be something if we did, if we do run into contingencies, we would have to go to a special town meeting. I mean, if we run into problems and don't have the contingencies to fund.
Eric, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I think that
Whoops, you're breaking up, Eric.
and that, I mean, we will have other options if there is a, yeah, well, I'm not shooting that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Can you start over?
Okay. I can. I think I can. Let me post saying that I think we should go ahead and do it with the 25,500 in the current, as presented. And if we run into contingencies, We have all the other options that were listed before as potential sources. Hopefully, we would never have access, but other options down the road for contingency if we need that money.
Okay, thanks. So one thing that is not, that we don't know is whether or not there's going to be anything else that the Conservation Commission requires. And I guess my question is, since that, you know, we're looking at that process, hoping that that hearing, reopening the order of conditions can get done by that September 7th deadline. Do we have to, if there was some sort of a glitch in that process, will we have already signed off on all of this? It's another risk, I guess, that that I just want to make sure we've thought through.
Yes, it would be a risk. If we never get the extension from Concom and we're sitting here with a 48-inch pipe, but I think at this point, given the other risks, we just have to balance them out, and leaving the road open indefinitely is really not an option. The clock, you know, we're going to be spending a lot more to close it up and move forward. I think the original estimate was about $80,000 higher to do all of that. And I think what we could do is the select board could transfer $30,500 potentially, I think, and to cover any other costs by, if they're needed through Concom, or else we would have to go to the finance committee. But I think that potentially the costs that Concom could require are more in the range that FinCom could assist us.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Melissa, Eric, do you feel like you have enough information to move forward?
We could transfer all of the ARPA money that's there, and that would give us some contingency. Wouldn't give us much of a contingency, but it would give us some. That obviously would be. Is that refundable to ARPA if we don't use it all?
Oh, sure.
Do we have an exact figure?
It's 35,000. I think it's 35,490. Or
We could just do
690.
35, you know, just make it a round number.
okay, so if you did 35,000, that would be fine.
So we have some.
Okay.
I think I'd vote. I'd like that. I'd like to see that happen.
All right. So
I feel
are you making a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll, make a motion that we move forward with the larger pipe for the culvert, 48-inch, I believe, culvert, and request a change in the time of year restriction with the Concom and any other.
I think the Concom handled that time, so you're probably
So just to move forward with the project using the larger pipe.
the 48-inch.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Make peace on your eye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Thanks for coming this evening, Matt. I know you've been to a lot of meetings recently in Shutesbury, so we appreciate your time. Okay, we have a few minutes, so what I'd like to do is open the floor for public comment. I know we're out of order, but we wanted to get these two very important things taken care of, the public hearing and dealing with the culvert. So as always, if you have a public comment, please use the raised hand feature. try to limit your comments to a couple of minutes. And if somebody
Yeah,
else.
Has a
somebody-
question here, Rita.
Oh, sure.
Yes, before, just wondering what the time frame was for the culvert. I was out there today. You have, it, you know, it's opened up, the road is open. There is fencing around National Grid poles 80 and 79. That is part of the project, that we're going to install new primary lines to those poles. But that's at the end of, say, this work request. So, and that's that's right before an intersection with the lines with Lakeview. So talking to the project manager, they could install all the poles down Lock Pond Road, just leave those 2 poles out for now until that is done. Right now, it's open between poles 79 and 80 where the culvert is. It's been that way. That's how it was originally designed. So you can work there and there's still the phone and cable wires, but that's not energized. That's not an electrocution hazard. But they want to, and it's to finish the project up by December. So this needs to be done by the end of the year on our end. But so we can report certain upgrades to the state. When is the culvert? What is the time frame? I know you're working on it now. What's the time frame of the culvert being in and completed enough, at least so we can finish our work and install the new overhead lines over it?
The guesstimate, and Matt could probably help, is we have to start by September 7th with a goal of completing by the middle of November.
Okay.
I think maybe November 17th. Matt, do you have that date?
Yeah, November 17th was the deadline I suggested for completion of in-water work. Hopefully in-water work would be done well before that. Looking at my calendar, if we begin September 7th with in-water construction, they estimate about 6 weeks to complete that. So that would be roughly middle of October 20th. For in-water work, and then following that, it would be backfilling, paving, installing new guardrail. Essentially the poles needed to be, or the electrical lines needed to be removed for crane operations. Crane operations should be completed. Like I said, probably before that October 20th deadline. I'm assuming that's going to be some of the first things they do in water. There's just going to be some heavy equipment, excavators and whatnot operating in that area, which they probably want to keep away from the. So I would say, yeah, by November is probably a good. Once they get the culvert in place and a lot of the heavy construction work done, I don't see why they couldn't be done in tandem. You know, the roadway paving, the installation of the guardrails done with the utility pole work, but it's all contingent on you know, the culvert being installed, I guess. And we're, like I said, mid-October for that.
Okay, so mid-October is when crane, that's the goal of when the crane, which is the big problem.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
That should be finished by then, or hopefully it'll go.
By the end of
Correct.
the month.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right. So moving back to public comment, I see a couple of hands up. Rob, go ahead.
Thank you.
And
Uh,
actually, can I just ask people to say their name in case, just for the record?
Sure. Rob Kibler, Pratt Corner Road. 2 things. First of all, compliment to the highway department. Last week I drove down Cooleyville Road, and honestly, it was in the best shape I've ever seen it in. And after the summer we've had, I find that remarkable. So, job well done. Second thing, Many of you know that Miriam DeFont is my wife, and I'm speaking here as an engineer and not as a household member of the Concom. In my opinion, the select board did the right thing to authorize the funds and to proceed, even though there is some risk, because construction costs never go down. And if the decision had been made to postpone this a year, we'd probably be looking at needing $150,000 instead of $25,000. So I believe very strongly that was the right decision.
Thank you. Jim?
Yes, Matt, missing in your calculations. for
Jim, this
the-
is public comment.
I'm sorry.
Not a
Oh.
time for asking questions. I'm sorry. That was before. So we're
Well,
in public
there
comment now.
Well, there wasn't any opportunity to ask questions before.
Well, I did take some questions. Yeah. If you have a question for Matt, I'd suggest if you could put it in writing. Because we're not revisiting the decision has been made.
All right, well, it was a simple one, something was missing from all the calculations that I was curious about.
Okay,
That's all.
well, submit it in writing and we'll get an answer for you. Any other public comments?
I have one.
I'm sorry, okay. Can you
you
just
hear me?
identify yourself?
Joe Salvador. Maybe you can get the electric company to waiver the price of the pole.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any poll replay was already paid, right? So you're saying, yes, that was already done.
Yeah,
Okay.
but well, thank
Okay,
you for-
I think
information. I understand you're gonna give the information back to somebody.
Yes, and we'll give you the contact so we can coordinate in the future. So, no problem. Thank you.
Okay. Rita?
yeah,
Oh, no, I didn't know. There's no more comments that I. see.
okay, all right, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is reviewing the minutes of July 19th. Are there any additions, deletions? Eric, Melissa, I assume you've had a chance to take a look at them.
Yes.
They're okay with me.
Melissa, you good?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of July 19th, 2023?
Yes, so moved.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Okay, the next item we have is a request from the Shutesbury Athletic Club for the select board to put an article on an upcoming town meeting warrant to accept Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 33B, for the purpose of allowing service at 10 a.m. at the athletic club. And is there somebody here from the athletic club to just briefly describe what this request is about?
That was Margaret Dusty who made the original request and said he wanted it.
Becky, Becky, is that you? Because I can't hear you.
I moved it for Steve, so
Okay.
hang on one second.
All right.
There you go.
Sorry, it was Mark Oshetsky who's brought the request forward to the select board. His original request was that they open and serve at 10 a.m. Requesting the select board to authorize that. Research by our administrative secretary, Geneva Bickford, found that we have not the town has not adopted the required statute that would enable the select board to make that decision. So Mark said he would want to pursue requesting the select board to put on the upcoming town warrant, be it a special town meeting or the annual town meeting.
And Becky, just a clarification, is this 10 a.m. on Sundays or is this 10 a.m. every day?
10 a.m. on Sundays only.
Okay. And the reason being to open at 10 a.m. was, if I remember
I
correctly.
think they want to have brunch.
Brunch.
Is that, yeah.
There
I
was
think-
something about a food truck too, so they must have food trucks come in with the brunch.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so what is the pleasure of the select board? Melissa, Eric? You in agreement? to allow this?
I'm okay, yeah, I'm
Fine.
okay with it.
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
So what we're agreeing to is just to put it on the warrant for a future town meeting.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so do I hear a motion to approve a future article accepting Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 33B?
So moved.
Second,
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Okay, next item on the agenda is we have our highway superintendent is retiring as of, I believe, September 30th. And so we when we have a hire like this, we typically appoint a hiring committee, and the select board appoints that committee, and we look to have representation from town boards as well as private citizens. So Becky, do you want to, you have a slate of names to provide to the select board?
Yes, the personnel board has moved ahead in nominating April Stein. I'm sorry, I had messages on my computer screen. I wasn't sure if it was going to stop working. So it's personnel board is April Stein. Select board nominated Melissa Makepeace. The finance committee nominated, I forget, it's not. Not
Bob Groves, is it?
Bob Groves,
Bob.
it's Bob, sorry, Bob, I forgot, I was thinking there. Then for the two at-large positions that names that people have submitted, names are Merrill Mandel, who has a degree, I believe, in engineering, and Penny Jakes, who has a great deal of experience with Concom and would help us with our blanket order of conditions on that side. So that's the slate that has come forward at this time for the select board to review.
Questions, Melissa, Eric?
Sounds like a great group to me.
Ditto, I agree.
And Becky, you serve, you staff it, is that correct?
Yes, I'll be ex officio, not voting.
And has the advertising happened yet?
It has not, and I will be organizing the first meeting for this coming week. I'm sorry, I'm gonna be on vacation for a couple days, so start between the 21st and the 25th. I will try to find a date that accommodates everyone, and I will present the ad for them to review, and if they want changes made before it's placed, we will do that this coming week. And also it'll be an organizational meeting where they can select a chair and sort out all the other details about the committee's time schedule.
So can you give me those dates again? The 20,
21st to the 25th. Next week, we'll have I'm gonna email all the folks listed here as they've been appointed and ask for a date, one date during that week where we can all meet.
okay. It doesn't seem like a lot of time then before September 30th. So in terms of advertising, interviewing, so we should really be thinking about, if we don't have a new highway superintendent, what the plan is on an interim basis.
Okay,
Okay, so do I hear a motion to make those appointments to the hiring committee? So I think I have them written down: April Stein, Melissa Makepeace O'Neill, Penny Jakes, Bob Groves, and Merrill Mandel.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Okay, the next item on the agenda is just to review two votes that the select board took at a special meeting that we had last week on the 9th. And the first item was approving a design proposal for Gale Associates for some additional exterior work. So it's doing an evaluation of exterior work that's needed at the elementary school. And that was from a recommendation from our building committee. And then confirmation of a vote that the town would submit I believe it's Department of Energy Resources or Energy Resources, a design grant for Dudleyville Dam, which we were doing on behalf of Lois Brown, who is the owner of the property where the Dudleyville Dam is located. And in that instance, the town had to be the applicant, but the town has no obligations. If this grant is awarded, it's awarded to Lois Brown to then engage her own consultants to guide her through the process of taking the dam down, which I know is a very high priority for her. So do we need a vote or is it just informing people?
I think you reconfirmed the vote because it wasn't on the agenda, but they were unanticipated and important projects.
Okay, so we were working under deadlines for both of them, and that's why the vote was taken. So do I hear a motion to confirm the select board vote of August 9th to approve a design proposal by Gale Associates for the Shutesbury Elementary School?
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. And then just confirmation on the vote of the application submitted to the Department of Energy Resources, the State Department, Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, for a design grant for Dudleyville Dam that was submitted on behalf of Lois Brown.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. All right, moving right along, we have appointment of 2 new members to the web committee. So I see the chair of the web committee, Gail Fleischaker, is here with us. And Gail, if you just want to introduce the two members. I don't know if they're both here.
Yes, at our meeting on June 29th, we invited two people to come who had expressed some interest in the committee. Among other business of the meeting, we went through what are the responsibilities of the committee, who on the committee has what particular tasks. They asked questions of us, and they both expressed interest in being appointed to the committee. And that's Joyce Bramhut and Greg Cowlton. So the co-op committee requests the select board's appointment of those two people, please.
Okay. And I don't know if either one of them are here.
Joyce is here. I do not see Greg.
Greg, okay. Joyce, is there anything you want to say about your interest in the committee?
Not much. I'm interested in the web as a tool for our website as a tool for communication in the town, and I'm comfortable with computers, and I'm confident that I'll be able to learn whatever I need in order to keep it going and improve its accessibility and ease of finding information. And that's it interested me, and it's a way that I can contribute in a small way.
Great, thank you. And I've had some personal experience with Greg's skills, technological skills, so I can attest to. I think he'll be a real asset to the web committee. So anything else, Gail, that you want to add?
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
So does that bring you up to a full complement of members?
Yes, it does.
It does. Okay, great. All right, so do I hear a motion to appoint Joyce Brownhot as a member of the web committee? Did I hear, Melissa, did you make the motion?
Yes, I said so.
Okay, it was a little hard to hear. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Okay, great. Congratulations and thanks for coming this evening. The next item.
What about Greg? What about Greg?
Oh, sorry, thank you. He wasn't here, so I just forgot about him. Okay, do I hear a motion to appoint Greg Carlton to the web committee?
So moved.
Second,
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Thanks for that catch.
Thank you from the web committee.
Thank you, Gail. Thanks, Joyce, for coming this evening. The next item on the agenda is to do just an update on where we are with the Conservation Commission. I know that there's been some discrepancy between in terms of legal expenditures, and when we met with the Conservation Commission last week, we talked about this, and then I did not attend the Conservation Commission meeting, but I did listen to the tape, and I think we're still not in, we don't agree on the numbers, which I think is important for us to just get straightened out. So I think what we should do is, Becky, if you can put all the bills together, so we can send that to the commission, so we can just get this straightened out.
Okay, will do.
Mary, did you have a comment from the Conservation Commission?
Yeah, just a question. So did the committee approve, we sent the scope of services. Did the committee approve the funding for that scope of services to review the regulations?
We did the other night, I believe.
We did,
Okay.
we also asked her to submit the proposal.
Oh, okay. Okay,
But the scope Services.
Right, so we needed the scope of services, right, okay.
And
Miriam,
that was sent in, so,
Yes, yes.
okay.
And I read through it, Rita, there's one thing that I caught that I'm not sure if it's an issue for us approving. I just wanted to bring question forward.
Sure,
Is that in the two that was sent to us, the one that was submitted or prepared by Miriam, and the ones prepared by the Kane, the attorney's office. The attorney's office had in billing extra expenses out of pocket to add to that. I don't know if we had addressed that. We had done our figures and our approval based on the 5 hours times the 335 per hour that Attorney Goodman charges. That was just something I happened to catch in there. I'm not sure it may not be a big thing. It was just something reading it. The one that Attorney Goodman says, it says that hold on, I have to find that section. Hourly rate, we do not charge for word processing, other expenses. Hold on. I've just lost it. I just had it up here. Give me 1 second. Oh, yes, it says that we also will bill for certain costs and out-of-pocket disbursements. So we hadn't accounted for that in our motion, in our calculation. I don't know that that's necessarily, if it was a big concern, it was just the difference between the two that I had seen, that's all.
sure. Becky, how does that typically,
That's a very common thing in legal billing. So if for any reason there's a multiple of mailings or filing of deeds or something, those costs are typically added. And I think it would be reasonable to add, for the select board to add, add expenses for incidentals as they
incidental,
occur.
okay. Okay,
Yeah, I want to make sure because we had based our number on just the hourly.
Yeah,
I want to make sure we were.
right, okay. All right, so do I hear a motion then to approve the 5 hours for special counsel and
Well,
to,
you've already voted to approve the 5 hours.
we did, but should we just amend it to add the incidental expenses, or is that not?
Why don't we say, I'll make a motion that in addition to the 5 hours we previously approved, that we add the incidental expenses amounts to that,
Okay,
the scope.
all right, and to authorize one of the chairs to execute the agreement. Can we add that onto the vote? The agreement from Elizabeth Goodman has a signature for the select board.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
So
All right.
moved.
Can I just say one thing too, that in the scope of work that Miriam said deliverables will include a total of 5 hours. I would just put in the word up to 5 hours. I mean, I'm sure there'll be 5 hours, but I don't, that's a minor point as well. I just think it should say up to. I mean, that's how those kind of things are usually worded.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that it will be at least 5 hours. So.
Okay, that's fine
Yeah,
then. I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Okay, so a motion's been made and seconded.
Second,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. To add incidental expenses and to authorize the execution of the contract with Elizabeth Goodman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Thank you, Sonia. Aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Okay, and then the only other outstanding thing with regard to sort of within the legal category is the gift account that we just need to, if that in fact is gonna move forward, we need to have language, and maybe Becky, you and I can just put our heads together and get back to the Conservation Commission. But I did note at the meeting of the Conservation Commission, there was discussion about changing the scope. So that's not changing the scope to beyond review of the regulations and the bylaw. So we need to get clarification from the Conservation Commission about that. They were going to go back to the person who talked about making the donation. But we don't need to vote on anything tonight.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to clarify what he wants. And we were trying to figure out the language.
Yeah, it was the language, but then Miriam did talk about whether or not expanding how that fund might be used, for example, to pay for a consultant such as Patrick Gardner. And that was specific to the gift. So okay.
Yeah, before you move on for that, should we
Sure.
ask for, before we vote on that or move forward to that, should we ask for the donor to give us something in writing for what the scope that they were thinking of? Should it be from the donor?
Did you say that
Already.
the donor had given us a scope, but it sounded like Miriam was going to go back to the donor and ask about expanding that scope. So before any of that happens, we need to, get something final from, because it's subject to our approval.
So it would be helpful if you could do the draft of some language that would help.
Yeah, we just have, it's just a couple of words, Mary. Yeah, and we're going to do that. That's what I just,
Okay,
Becky and I were going to do.
thank you.
Okay. Okay. The next item on the agenda is to the Energy Committee is here tonight. I see Nate Hurd. And Nate, and is Michael here too?
He's just popping in. He was in the waiting room.
Okay. All right. So we've been talking about the community choice aggregation, and I know there's still some outstanding legal issues, which I assume have not been resolved in the 2 weeks or so that we met. But I think what the Energy Committee wants to do is just to keep moving ahead, doing research and having some initial discussions, so that at such time as we get the go-ahead from, is it the Department of Public Utilities? Is that who's the holdup is? DPU? Because we have a municipal power and light plant, so just gets very confusing.
Rita, can I just call the ECAC to order since it's a
Oh,
quorum?
sure. Oh, you have okay, absolutely.
So I just call us to order at 7:01. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So, Nate, I know you've done a number of different presentations to us, and tonight we're talking about appointing you as a select board designee to deal with the community choice aggregation. So, and you did send us a an email last week saying you've begun to have some initial discussions because we would need to bring a consultant on board. So maybe you can give us an update on where things stand.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So when we last spoke about community choice aggregation, there was some question about potential costs that the town might accrue in this stage of outreach to potential energy brokers who would then work on our behalf with DPU. And what I learned is that there is no cost to the town at this stage in working with energy brokers. And the only time that energy brokers receive funds through a community choice aggregation contract is not even directly from the town, but it is through the arrangement with the energy supplier. That is a standard, no matter what broker or contractor we might end up going with. So there'd be no costs to having these conversations or even signing a contract and working through that whole extended process with DPU in setting up a CCA arrangement. So only once the electrons start moving under a CCA would there be would the contractor get paid, and then not by us is the other piece. And the other piece of information that I wanted to bring before the select board is about, say, an RFP. So is a formal request for proposals necessary in soliciting a broker? And what I gathered is that it is not, and that most communities select their broker by talking to other communities that are in the midst of the process, or have already set up a CCA, or these sorts of more informal conversations, some of which we had in order to bring CCA as an issue before town meeting. So there's no need for a formal process unless it's something that's required through the nature of the community, right? So maybe a larger city might have some internal regulatory requirement to issue an RFP, but for Shutesbury, that would not apply. So those were the two sort of questions that I wanted to, that had come up before, that I wanted to address this evening.
Thanks, Nate.
And what about the MLP issue? What is the status of the MLP snafu or whatever?
So Michael did, as chair of ECAC, reach out to Donna McNichol to seek clarification regarding whether the MLP might in some way prevent us. We do not, as I am aware, have a response on that question unless Michael receives something awful, directly.
I did not get a response, Eric. I think the way I would describe it is Donna's dealing with another energy related issue up to her eyeballs and probably doesn't have time for this question quite now. So I'm going to talk to her on Friday. So if I can raise it with her in person, so to speak, in person and live, I'll do that. But I didn't get a response via email from her.
Okay, thanks.
I guess it doesn't preclude us from, I think we need to keep moving on that. It doesn't preclude us from doing some more research, is that, and designating Nate as the point person on this.
Right, and I think just for context, I've mentioned it before, but we do know that there's other towns that have MLPs and CCA, so Leverett and Conway in particular, two that come to mind. And in both those situations, they're operating fully. There's been no, complaints from DPU. So, and because there's no cost to the town going forward to do research and engage, it seems like we might as well keep going. It's really at the broker's risk. It's their time.
Okay, before I take any questions, I just want to address Nate's issue around the RFP. So our town administrator is our designated procurement officer. I have some experience with Chapter 30B, which is the state's procurement statute too, but I'm going to let Becky just opine on whether or not you think, doing a formal RFP through the 30B process makes sense, because this is a procurement of under goods and services, but there's no money changing hands as Nate is describing it. So it's strictly a proposal or entertaining proposals from somebody who's not going to be charging us.
Right, so, and as far as hiring of consultants, 30B already gives leeway, not requiring RFPs. But at the same time, RFPs are often used because you end up with a better product. You reach people that you may not know, that you haven't bumped into because of the public process. And while there isn't money, you're not paying the consultant, but it might give you a chance to thoroughly review what contracts the person has put together, look at their work history and get information uniformly from a number of people that you might not think to get in an informal conversation. So there's always an ongoing debate. Sometimes it's pretty cut and dry that, the decision making. This one, I think you can go either way, but there might be value in the more formal process that you haven't thought through yet. And maybe we could sit down and talk about it a little bit, you and I, just to look at the consultants that are out there, and because the other hand, there might be a limited number of consultants anyway, and it might be just the same two that will respond to every RFP. So why are you bothering? So that's another big piece of the picture.
Yeah, and when you say RFP under the 30B process, it's a very prescribed process, and I'm not sure it's necessary for this, but
Right.
maybe there's a different way to evaluate rather than going through the very formal 30B process. I'm going to give the select board members any comments, questions for Michael or Nate. I see one hand up, Mary Lou.
Hi, Mary Lou Conca. I'm just curious. You all know what you're talking about, I'm sure. You're talking in code with, a lot of initials, and I really have no idea. And I'm curious if it can be explained simply in layperson's terms. What is the process that we are in the midst of?
I just want to note we've had a number of discussions about this, and there's a lot of information up on the Energy Committee's website. But Nate, if you can, just in a capsule form, just tell us what the community choice aggregation is.
Sure. So I think the 30-second version is that when you receive your electricity bill, there are two kinds of charges, and one is for the maintenance of your power lines and the equipment that gets electricity to your house. And the other set of charges relates to where that electricity is coming from, the supply of the electricity. So I get my electricity through National Grid, and as their customer, I get a supply of electricity that is what they decide. And what community choice aggregation allows the town to do is identify its own supplies, which could be less expensive in some cases, not guaranteed. And we can also increase the proportion of renewable electricity sources, such as wind, in the supply that the town receives. And I think, one of the main takeaways I want everyone to have in a discussion about CCA is that you can always opt out of a CCA program, and the objective really is to enhance the number of choices that community members have in where they get their electricity from.
Very
And
good.
I would certainly, if you have other additional questions, encourage you to check out the Energy and Climate Action Committee's website, where, as Rita mentioned, there are FAQs and some videos and presentations that we've put together that, hopefully will answer any other questions. And you can always write our committee directly too.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nate. Any other questions? All right, so I believe that you, Michael and Nate, were looking for the select board to designate Nate as a point person for community choice aggregation for the town of Shutesbury. Is that correct? Michael, you're muted.
That is correct. The one thing I would add, just for context, is that it's really the select board that's taking the charge in this. So part of it would be for the select board to clarify the role of ECAC. What we were thinking is ECAC would be the sounding board for Nate for bouncing ideas around. And then when clarity came, Nate could come before the select board with whatever presentation.
Okay, all right, that understood. Okay, so do I hear a motion to appoint Nate Hurd as the point person working with the Energy Climate Action Committee on community choice aggregation?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Make peace, Sonia, aye. Oh, you're.
Eric, can you hear? Is he frozen?
He is
frozen. Real cloud. I think there's something weird going on.
He's coming in from Mars.
But
Okay.
yes, second.
Okay.
Put a hand up.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Make peace, Sonia, aye.
Okay, Stocker, aye. Okay, and Farrell, aye.
Well, that was quick.
Thanks. I think we just lost Eric. Is that? Yeah.
So Rita, as we transition, I just say ECAC is not adjourning. We're just moving to our Zoom link.
Okay.
So our meeting continues. So anyone who wants to follow us, we'll see you there.
Okay.
And thank you for the select board.
All right. Thanks. Good night. Okay. The next item on the agenda is legal review of the culvert drawdown violation order that was issued by the Conservation Commission. And Becky, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay, I think most people, in case you're not aware, the select board received a violation, a letter from Concom regarding a number of concerns they had when there was more water let out and lowering after heavy rains. And since that time, I went to a Concom meeting. Howie and I have stayed in constant communication. He has since set the opening of the sluiceway at a 1/2 inch and no further. But the letter itself, which is about 4 pages long, has combined the permit for the culvert as well as the permit for the drawdown in the winter drawdown. And it's quite complicated. So I have reached out to Gregor McGregor to ask for a quote to review the violation for the town and get guidance on making sure that we can, we want to make sure we understand it fully, because to make sure we don't omit something that needs to be done or not done in compliance with this order. This is a critical project. The quote I received back today is for $3,500 to do a thorough review of all the permits that are involved. And of course, it's the 2018 permit on the drawdown, which is a major issue that the town is going to be working on a new permit for it. So having that review would probably be helpful legally in going forward. But the request to the select board is whether they would support the work being done by McGregor at that cost.
So questions, Melissa? Eric?
So it would also be the contract that comes with it with signature. So you would also be voting to sign the contract to allow for the services with McGregor as the legal authority for the town.
So this is under the special, as special counsel. So he's served as special counsel on a few other issues for us. And this is another one where our current town council has recused herself. Is that correct?
That is the problem. As a Lake resident, there were a number of questions that came up on the issue. And she advised that I call McGregor.
Melissa, Eric, do you have any questions?
Okay with it, if you can still hear me.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
I tell.
Becky, does the proposal include any time with the select board, or is he going to be, would he be producing some sort of a report for us? Because I know, we need to understand everything within that violation notice. So I'm just wondering whether or not we would have the opportunity to ask questions, or would you and
Yes. He speaks of the back and forth with the town. He wants to talk with our dam keeper and myself. He wants to read all the guiding documents that were in place, which were minimal. We only have the MOU and the 2018 permit, and they really are silent on the regular maintenance of the dam. So we don't have a lot for him to review that is directly related, but we have the MOU that is also in question whether it's valid or not, since it wasn't signed by the select board. So we're trying to get an understanding of multiple questions here.
I see one hand up, but I just want to make sure the select boards had an opportunity to ask any questions.
I'm all set.
Okay, Mary?
So do you have a scope of services for what you would want him to do? And is this going to be after you hire the firm that's going to develop the whole NOI? Or is he going to assist them in doing that?
My understanding is that this is specifically to address the violation notice.
And just to clarify, it's an enforcement order and not a violation notice.
I don't believe it's an
Not as,
enforcement order.
not as submitted to us. It's labeled a violation notice. And it specifically says in the first paragraph that it is not an enforcement order. I'm happy to send you what we received, Mary, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's okay. I was just looking at it.
It says violation notice on it.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, and Miriam made a point that she was trying to
Yeah.
be cooperative and work with us
Yeah.
ahead of an enforcement
I
order.
apologize. I misstated. You're correct. It wasn't a more serious enforcement order. My fault. Sorry.
Okay.
That's fine.
Amanda?
Hi, thank you, Rita. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Hi. I just have a quick question. Is there some reason why the select board can't go directly to the Conservation Commission and get these issues straightened out directly, instead of involving Mr. McGregor? It seems like with this additional fee, it's going to be pretty close to $20,000 that we've spent on his services. It just seems like it might be easier and a lot less expensive to just work with the Conservation Commission directly. I'm just wondering. Thank you.
Becky, do you have a response to that?
I guess that we're trying to understand the complexity of it and the differences between an enforcement order and a violation notice. And we have asked some questions about it, and we've gotten a limited amount of answer. I mean, at the meeting, I asked about how it is that we've got two permits that are combined. But I need assistance on understanding how to respond or how to separate them out and where they work together. I still have some questions after being at the Conservation Commission meeting and asked a few at that point in time.
Jill, go ahead.
Yes, could you clarify what the violation was?
It's kind of, it's multiple in nature. Like I said, the 4 different pages, it refers to drawing down the lake. And there again, that's why I do need more assistance, because the language, there's lowering versus drawdown. They have very specific definitions, and we need to understand better which has what weight. So that was one of the issues. The first paragraph cited a few. There was a bucket of dirt that was spilled over and a number of erosion controls that were pointed out at a site visit by Concom. And I think that there was a pile where they had put asphalt that was to be removed by a big truck. It didn't fit in the first truck, and so they let it sit overnight, and it wasn't covered overnight as it should have been. And those are the only ones I can cite specifically, besides the concerns about drawdown and lowering of the water.
Yeah, so just one last, just to clarify, I thought the violation had to do with the amount of the drawdown in a short period of time that violated either the bylaws or the state regs or both. Could you comment on that? Do I have that clear, right?
That is again more of an area I need a better understanding because the bylaw, there is no bylaw that addresses that. All we have, as I said earlier, is the permit for drawdown, so it would be an order of conditions that we were following, not a bylaw. And the references to state statute, they apply in different situations and different scenarios. The things that are quoted about a drawdown officially is when you lower 2 feet or more, from my understanding. So using the language of a drawdown in the violation order is in question because it was, I think, 6 inches or 7 inches. So these are all important issues that we're going to be learning more about and working on as we get our dam consultant. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we are following the violation notice as best we can until we can, you know, establish a clear guiding documents through an order, a notice of intent and order of conditions with Conservation Commission, which we hope to achieve in the upcoming months or this coming year for sure.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve the engagement of Gregor as special counsel for a total of $3,500? To deal with the violation notice that the town received from the Conservation Commission. Did you say so moved, Melissa? I'm having trouble hearing you. Okay, is there a second? Oh, I think Eric's frozen again. Eric, good? Eric, okay, all right. So a motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stocker, aye. And Farrell, aye. Okay, the last item on the agenda is town administrator updates. Becky, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm going to be brief tonight. I know we have some big issues. The PFAS update for tonight is during this past week, we have identified one additional dual poet required in the house near the fire station. This house had been unoccupied earlier and sold more recently. And since that time, we were able to set up a test and a PFAS test, and the results came back positive. We immediately brought a water dispenser and 5-gallon jugs of water to the party and are working on installing a dual poet because of the reading on this property was at 9. It was greatly over 20. That being the case, we need to follow through on these actions. Letters have gone out to the homeowner, alerting them to their situation, and I have spoken with them. So that is our current PFAS update. It is not in a location that enlarges our area, so it is not triggering additional homes to be tested, but it is increasing the work that we need to do. The second issue is our gasoline our gasoline reading that came back from the test at the fire station. was supplemented by additional testing about 2 weeks ago. And that testing is, we are still waiting, it was completed, the 2-week period ended, and now we are waiting on results from that test to apprise the select board and determine further actions that will be needed. The last thing and most positive thing is that the school roof is nearing completion, and we are confident that the work will be done before school starts. And that's it for my updates.
Okay, great. Anything else? Next meeting is in 2 weeks. Oh, Mary, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just had one request. So I attended the Lake Wyoto Association meeting on Saturday, and their request to the select board was that once you decided what was going forward with the culvert project, could there be a townwide communication, letting people know what the process is and what's going to be going on? And I said I would communicate that.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
Yep.
Very much. Mary.
So we could do a town announce, just giving an update after tonight's meeting.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So just double checking, our next meeting is the 29th?
29.
Okay. All right, very good. So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Meeting, yes, so moved.
Thanks.
So
And I think I heard
second,
a second from Eric.
second,
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Peace, O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.